guess we'll go with each one of you guys. Like, what is the one thing that you guys get when an application is sent your way about someone who wants a contest prep? Well, what is the one thing you see too frequently that you wish people would kind of fix up? Brad,
Jeff, you want to go? You want me to?
I'll go. So we don't have those awkward pauses. So basically, yeah, I think the one thing I see a lot is I think people are not aware of where their body composition should be before starting a prep, and they kind of they're not realistic with their timelines. So you might get someone who's, let's say, 30 pounds over stage weight, and they're putting that application in 12 weeks. So of course, when you get that application, you look at the photos, you're like, yeah, that's not going to work out too well. Otherwise, the prep itself is going to be super, super invasive, and it's probably not going to yield a very good end product. So I think it's super important that when we're thinking about starting a prep, we definitely need to allow like plenty of time. And often, if we're sitting like 30 pounds over stage weight, like that could be a year process of actually getting where you need to be. So obviously 3 months is going to create a very effective setup for that. So I think it's just the awareness of where people should be or need to be. But often a lot of these people they're unaware. So I think that's something that we probably need to do on this podcast is basically like give some guidance as far as like where or how to assess, where we need to be as far as like a body composition before even starting a prep.
So Jeff, I think if I were a novice person, the one thing that would come up when you say that is like, well, how do I know what is X amount of pounds out? Like how do I go about figuring this out? So how do I ensure that I'm not one of those people who's starting out 40 pounds out, but just doesn't know so? How would I go about that, like getting that sorted out?
I think for me, it would be like, okay, let me ask someone who actually has competed before, knows more or less what actually, stage conditioning looks like. So actually getting an outside eye or an outside perspective. And also too, I think, that would be my go-to, because I think a lot of times when people are self-assessing themselves, they might just be looking at, oh, okay, yeah, I have a little bit of an outline of abs. I'm not that far off, but the reality is, you probably have a lot more body fat there than what you perceive. So I think, just whether it's, you come to us as coaches and get like hey, can you assess where I'm at? Or someone else who has an experienced eye, I think that would be kind of my main go-to. And not so much relying on, let's say, body fat testing and things like that, because that can be very, very not too accurate, let's just say.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, I'll do it on the quickness for people. Like if y'all DM me and just show me your physique front and back, I can tell you like in no time, right? Like how many pounds you have to go to get into what I think is appropriate contest shape. It really doesn't take that long. But you do need a pro to come in and like run you that estimate on the situation for sure.
Well, yeah, that's just it. You've seen so many physiques over the years, and we both have competed for years, and we've coached many physiques, and we kind of know more or less just by looking visually, just at a couple of photos, snapshots, like, okay, that person, we got to drop 20 pounds or we got to drop 30. And usually what I do when I assess people, like I kind of, give a ballpark estimate as far as where I think they're going to be, come stage time. And sure as shit, I'm pretty close more times than not. It's very, very, very rare, I would say, where I'm like really off. But for the most part, I'm like, within 5 pounds, give or take.
So for sure, to be safe though, you'd want to start, and this we'll probably go over this again at some point, but you want more than 1 week of time for every pound you have to lose, correct?
I think so.
Yeah.
Because I'm saying, let's say if you have to lose 20 pounds, like if you factor in, okay, we're going to lose a pound a week. That's a 20-week prep. But we have to also take into consideration, we're not robots, and there's going to be probably moments where we have stalls and plateaus. We might not know more or less how to kind of work around those initially. It might take some time to figure that out. Also, we have to factor in the life stressors and curveballs that come up, and we're not perfect either. Like, some of us, we have faults, and we're going to say binge. So we might have a setback here or there. So we have to factor all these things that get thrown at us. And the more time we have to prepare, so instead of that, let's say that 20 weeks to lose 20 pounds, if you add another 8 to 10 pounds, or not pounds, but 8 to 10 weeks on top of that, well, that just gives you a lot more flexibility with the way you can adjust people. And the analogy I like to give is, let's say you're tying your shoes and I give you 10 seconds. Like, you might be able to tie your shoes in 10 seconds, but think of like how stressed you're going to be trying to make that happen in such a short time frame. But if I give you a minute to tie your shoes, I mean, you're going to be at ease. You're going to have a lot of peace there. So that's basically kind of my thoughts around that.
Yeah, you get to fluff up the bunny ears and everything, and you know, make it look like it belongs in a Nike commercial. Brad,
a nice white fluffy bunny. I mean, yeah, we want to look really pretty when we get on stage, no doubt.
Yeah, and to kind of expand on what Jeff just said, you know, I really like, especially like our applications that we have, it provides a little bit of information and insight into that person's life. Because say that you do take that person that's going to need to drop 20 pounds, and like Jeff said, we want at a minimum, you know, 20 weeks, 1 pound per week. But then I look at their application, and if this is a person that's got a pretty, you know, easy lifestyle, I'll say, okay, let's add 5 weeks. So 20 pounds, 25 weeks, right? So that we can kind of account for those slip ups, those binges, vacations, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then I don't know about you guys, but my peeps in the healthcare industry, they seem to have a little bit higher stress. And so like your nurses, people in the medical, you know, in medical school, they tend to have a very high amount of stress. And so for those folks, I'll sometimes say, okay, if they need 20 weeks, 20 pounds, 25 weeks, 20 pounds for the normal person, those folks that have a little higher stress lifestyle, I'll say maybe we need 28 weeks, you know, add 3 weeks to that 5-week buffer, you know, for those folks that are really living that high stress lifestyle, you know, because those are the folks that tend to slip up more often. And we want to have, you know, that 90 seconds to get your shoe tied if you're really high strung and tend to choke under pressure, you know, and somebody's sitting there going 49, 48, 47, you know, and yeah. When you're under pressure like that, those folks that crack, you want to give them a little bit more time. And so I think that's why it's important to have a little bit, like you said, Jeff, of kind of those lifestyle contexts that sometimes might get missed when you don't know that athlete well enough.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like prep is it's invasive no matter how much time we have. It's an added layer of stress to your life, right? So the way I kind of look at it is balancing out supply and demand. So if you have someone, like you said, Brad's got like super high stress life, I mean, that's another layer of demand there. So you got the prep itself, like the deficit, you have the training, you have the steps count or the cardio, then you have like the outside stressors. You know, if that's the demand is super high and you have like a short timeline, like your overall stress and demand is going up even higher. And then if you think about it, if that's the case, then you're relegating how many refeeds and diet breaks you actually can take. And that's basically the supply. Mm-hmm. So in a sense, you're going to have your demand just through the roof through the entire prep. And your physique's going to look like that. It's going to be representative of that stress when you get on stage, flat, you know, just look fatigued, and it's just not a very good end product. So that timeline to me is just so huge. It just allows you to balance out the supply and demand a lot better. So you get more refeeds, more diet breaks, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm sure Berto could expand even more. But to me, it's like that timeline. Like, people need to, if they're going to start working with us for a prep, it's like they need to reach out to us way ahead of time so we can kind of, like, in a sense, set that prep up. So it's going to be very, very conducive towards a good end product. And that's basically making sure there's enough supply there.
Hey, I was just going to say, usually one of the ways I can tell who's had a really stressed prep is it's always those dudes that have like the dream tan on like the messiest, man. Like by the time they get to the show, it looks like dog crap on their face. Like their posing trunk on the sides is like a different color. Those are the dudes that it's like, dude, you barely made it here today. Like you barely woke up on time, basically. No, I agree. The timeline is super important. You got to be fair on both ends. Like we're good at what we do, but there's no way we can or we should try to make a significant chunk of your body weight try to disappear in 3 to 4 months. I like that idea of more than 1 week for every pound you have, and that's just a standard. And then on top of that, if you can convince the person to tack on, this kind of insurance, that kind of insurance, it's like, hey, diet break here. You just never freaking know here. I think that's super important. It's just having enough space to work, having a nice clean desk to start off with, basically.